Have you ever felt stressed but didn't know how to talk about it in English? Trust me, Anna, a lot of learners struggle the moment they try to describe how they feel.
You're right, Adam. Stress is something everyone experiences, but many students don't know the right expressions to talk about it clearly. And that's why today's episode is so important.
Welcome back to Speak English Fluently. If you're new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our weekly episodes.
Yes, subscribe and join our growing community. Today, we're talking about how to talk about stress in English with real life phrases and examples you can use immediately.
All right, Anna, let's get started. So, Anna, let's start simple. One of the easiest ways to talk about stress is just saying, I'm stressed. For example, you can say, I'm stressed because I have too many deadlines at work.
Exactly, Adam. And you can also use I'm feeling stressed. It's slightly softer. For instance, I'm feeling stressed because I have an important exam tomorrow. You see, it's the same idea, but it sounds a little more natural in casual conversations.
Oh, I love that one. And we can also talk about what's causing the stress. Like you could say, work is stressing me out. That's very common in real life. For example, Anna, this project is really stressing me out.
Yes, Adam. And another way to express it is using the word overwhelmed. Like, I'm feeling overwhelmed with all the tasks I have this week. People often use it when they have too much to handle at once.
Right. And don't forget about phrasal verbs. They're very common in spoken English. You can say, I'm burning out when stress is affecting your energy. For example, Anna, I've been working 12 hours every day. I think I'm burning out.
That's such a good one, Adam. And if you want to be even more descriptive, you can say things like, I feel under pressure or I'm tense. These are short, natural, and people use them all the time.
And here's a tip, Anna. Combining these expressions with why you feel stressed makes your English sound more fluent. Like, I'm feeling stressed because I have a big presentation tomorrow and I'm not ready.
Exactly, Adam. Adding the reason makes your sentences longer, more natural, and shows you can explain your feelings. People in real life do this all the time. Like you might hear, I'm under pressure because my boss expects a lot from me this week.
Also, don't forget casual ways to say it in informal conversations. You can say, I'm freaking out, or I'm really stressed out. Like, Anna, I'm freaking out about this exam.
Yes, Adam. And remember, using these phrases will make your English sound natural and you'll be able to talk about your feelings just like a native speaker.
All right, Anna, now that we've covered the basic expressions, let's move to more advanced ways to talk about stress. One phrase I really like is, I'm feeling drained. It shows not just stress, but also tiredness because of stress. For example, Anna, after this long week at work, I'm feeling completely drained.
Yes, Adam, that's a great one. And you can also say, I'm swamped. It's a very common expression for when you have too many tasks. Like, I can't go out tonight. I'm swamped with assignments.
Exactly. And another very natural phrase is, I'm at my wit's end. It's perfect when you feel like you can't handle the stress anymore. For example, Anna, I've tried everything and I'm at my wit's end with this project.
Yes, Adam, that one really shows strong stress. And don't forget about I feel like I'm on edge. It's used when stress makes you nervous or easily irritated. Like, I've been working nonstop and I feel like I'm on edge all the time.
Oh, that's a useful one for conversations with friends. And there's also, I'm stressed to the max, or I'm completely stressed out. For example, Anna, with all these deadlines, I'm stressed to the max.
Yes. And Adam, sometimes you can use idioms like, I feel like I have too much on my plate. It's like saying your responsibilities are overwhelming. For example, Anna, I can't even think straight. I have too much on my plate right now.
Exactly. And here's another tip. When you talk about stress in English, you can also express how it affects you physically. Like, I'm stressed and it's giving me headaches. Or, I'm so stressed that I can't sleep. People in real life say this all the time.
Yes, Adam, that's very natural. And it's good for conversations with colleagues, friends, or even teachers. Sharing not just that you're stressed, but how it affects you makes your English sound much more fluent.
And don't forget questions. You can ask others how they handle stress. Like, Anna, how do you deal with stress when work is overwhelming? This is a natural way to start a conversation about stress.
Exactly, Adam. And you can also give advice using expressions like, you should take a break, or try to relax and breathe. These are very common in English and sound friendly and natural.
So, Anna, I think with all these phrases, our listeners can now describe stress in English in many ways, from simple expressions like I'm stressed to advanced ones like I'm at my wit's end.
Absolutely, Adam. And the more you practice using these phrases in real conversations, the more fluent you'll become. Stress is part of life, but talking about it clearly in English is a skill everyone can learn.
All right, Anna, now let's practice using these expressions in real life situations. For example, imagine you just came home after a very busy day. You could say, I'm completely drained after work today.
Exactly, Adam. And if your friend asks why you're so tired, you can explain, I had back to back meetings all day. It was so stressful. See how adding the reason makes it sound natural?
Yes, that's very important. And another situation, imagine you have an exam tomorrow. You could say, I'm feeling overwhelmed with all the topics I need to study. It immediately tells people why you're stressed.
I've been there, Adam. And if you want to make it more casual with friends, you can say, I'm freaking out about this test. People use this all the time in everyday conversations.
Exactly, Anna. Now let's take a workplace example. Imagine your boss gave you a big project last minute. You can say, I'm at my wit's end. I don't know how I'll finish this on time.
Yes, Adam. And your colleague might respond with advice like, take a deep breath and focus on one task at a time. See how natural English conversations flow with stress expressions?
And here's a fun one. Imagine someone invites you to hang out, but you have too many tasks. You could say, I'd love to, but I'm swamped with work this week. That's polite and natural.
Absolutely. And another real life example, talking about physical effects of stress. You could say, I'm so stressed that I can't sleep at night. Or, all this stress is giving me a headache. These expressions make your English realistic and relatable.
Exactly, Anna. And when someone asks for advice, you can use friendly phrases like, you should take a break or try some deep breathing exercises. These are very natural ways to respond in English.
And don't forget, Adam, you can ask your friends about their stress too. Like, how do you deal with stress when everything gets too much? It makes the conversation balanced and interactive.
Yes, Anna. So, with these real life examples, our listeners can now use stress expressions in conversations at work, at school, or with friends. The key is practicing them in situations they really face.
Exactly, Adam. Remember, the more you practice talking about stress naturally, the more confident and fluent you'll become. And using these phrases will make your English sound very authentic.
All right, Anna, now that we've practiced real life situations, let's talk about some tips to talk about stress naturally in English and even how to cope with it.
Yes, Adam. One important tip is to use a variety of expressions instead of repeating, I'm stressed all the time. For example, you can say, I'm feeling tense, or I'm under pressure. This makes your English sound much more fluent.
Exactly. And don't forget to describe why you're stressed. For example, instead of just saying, I'm stressed, say, I'm stressed because I have a big presentation tomorrow and I haven't prepared yet. This is more natural and gives context.
Right, Adam. And here's another tip. Talk about how stress affects you physically or emotionally. For example, I'm so stressed I can't sleep at night. Or, I feel drained and anxious. Native speakers often include these details when talking about stress.
Yes, Anna. And for casual conversations with friends, you can use phrases like, I'm freaking out or I'm really stressed out. These are informal but very common in everyday English.
Absolutely, Adam. And another practical tip is to ask questions and involve others in the conversation. For example, Adam, how do you handle stress when work is overwhelming? It makes the conversation interactive and helps you practice real English.
Absolutely, Anna. And don't forget giving advice in English. For instance, you can say, you should take a short break or try some deep breathing exercises. This is very natural when talking to friends or colleagues.
Yes, Adam. And one more tip. Practice stress expressions in small daily situations. For example, at work, you can say, I'm swamped with emails today. Or at school, I'm feeling overwhelmed with homework. Using English in daily life makes it stick.
Exactly. And Anna, let's remind our listeners it's okay to express stress. Speaking about your feelings in English not only improves your fluency, but also makes your conversations more real and relatable.
Absolutely, Adam. And the more you practice, the easier it becomes. You can even write short sentences in English about your day. I'm stressed because of traffic today. Or I feel tense before my meeting. Writing helps you prepare for speaking naturally.
Yes, and remember, Anna, using these expressions correctly will make you sound confident and fluent. Stress is part of life, but talking about it clearly in English is a skill anyone can master.
Exactly, Adam. So, listeners, try these tips in your daily life. Start with simple phrases, then move to more advanced ones, and don't forget to include reasons, feelings, and advice. This is how you'll sound like a native speaker talking about stress.
All right, Anna, in this part, let's give our listeners even more real life examples of talking about stress. For instance, imagine you're planning a big event and things are going wrong. You could say, I'm so stressed out because everything isn't going according to plan.
Yes, Adam. And in a family situation, if a parent is worried about a child, they might say, I'm under so much pressure to make sure everything goes well. These expressions work in many situations, not just at work or school.
Exactly. And if you're a student with multiple exams, you can say, I'm overwhelmed with all the studying I need to do. Or even more casually, Anna, I'm drowning in homework. That's very informal, but very common among students.
Yes, Adam. And for a situation at work, imagine a tight deadline. You can say, I'm swamped with tasks and I don't know where to start. This is natural English people use every day.
And let's not forget physical reactions. For example, I'm so stressed I can't eat properly. Or stress is giving me stomach aches. Including physical effects makes your English realistic.
Yes, Adam. And another casual one is, I'm at my breaking point. People use this when stress is very intense. For example, Anna, I've been dealing with so many problems, I'm at my breaking point.
Oh, that's a strong one. And Anna, you can also talk about short-term stress versus long-term stress. Like, I'm stressed about this meeting today versus I've been stressed all month because of work. Both are natural.
Exactly, Adam. And when you want to give encouragement, you can say, don't worry, you'll get through it, or take a deep breath and focus. This is a very common way to respond to someone stressed.
Also, Anna, remember that humor can help too. For instance, you can say, I'm so stressed, I might turn into a coffee addict. It's funny, but also expresses your feelings clearly.
Yes, Adam. And one more tip. Using idioms makes your English more natural. For example, I've got a lot on my plate, or I'm carrying too much weight on my shoulders. These are perfect for daily conversations.
Exactly. And in social situations, you can ask friends about their stress too. Like, how do you handle stress, Anna, when everything gets too much? This keeps the conversation natural and engaging.
Yes, Adam. And practicing all these phrases in different situations, work, school, home, or with friends, is the key. The more you use them, the more confident you'll feel speaking about stress in English.
So, Anna, by now, our listeners have many tools: simple phrases, advanced expressions, idioms, ways to explain physical effects, and advice expressions. They can handle almost any situation.
Exactly, Adam. The important thing is to keep practicing and don't be afraid to talk about stress. Expressing your feelings clearly in English makes your speech more fluent and natural.
Anna, now that we've explored many expressions and situations, let's focus on practical strategies to talk about stress positively in English. For example, instead of just saying, I'm stressed, you can say, I'm facing some challenges at work, and I'm figuring out how to handle them.
Yes, Adam, that's a great tip. It's a subtle way to express stress while showing that you're taking action. People in real life often use this approach to sound mature and confident.
Exactly. And you can also talk about coping strategies in English. For example, I like to take a walk when I feel overwhelmed, or I do deep breathing exercises to calm down. This not only expresses stress, but also shows problem solving.
Another useful approach is to share feelings with empathy. For instance, you could say, I understand how stressful this is. I've been there too. It's natural and creates connection when talking to friends or colleagues.
Yes, Anna. And in English, you can also describe small signs of stress that are relatable, like, I notice I talk faster when I'm anxious, or I sometimes bite my nails when I'm tense. These details make your English very vivid.
Exactly. And here's a practical tip for speaking confidently. Use the present continuous to describe temporary stress. For example, I'm feeling a bit anxious about the upcoming meeting. It sounds natural and shows that the stress is situational, not permanent.
Good point, Anna. Another natural way to talk about stress is by comparing your feelings over time. For example, I was really stressed last week, but I'm feeling better now. This makes your English sound fluent and reflective.
Yes, and for conversations with coworkers or friends, you can introduce humor to lighten the mood. Like, I'm stressed, but I'm surviving on coffee and hope. It's casual, funny, and realistic.
And another tip, use expressions to describe progress under stress. For instance, I'm learning to manage my stress better every day. Or, even though I'm under pressure, I'm finding ways to stay calm. These sentences show positivity and resilience.
Absolutely, Adam. And don't forget that asking for support in English is natural too. You can say, can you help me? I'm feeling overwhelmed with this task. Native speakers do this all the time. It's polite and shows emotional awareness.
Finally, Anna, a powerful tip is to combine feelings with solutions in one sentence. For example, I'm feeling a little stressed, but I'm taking a short break to clear my mind. It's very practical, real, and fluent English.
Yes, Adam. And practicing these expressions in real conversations will make them second nature. You'll be able to talk about stress clearly, show empathy, and even give advice naturally in English.
Exactly, Anna. So our listeners now have new tools to express stress positively, describe feelings vividly, share coping strategies, and even include humor or empathy. That's a big step forward in fluent English.
Yes, Adam. And remember, expressing stress in English is not just about words. It's about clarity, emotion, and interaction. The more you practice, the easier it becomes.
All right, Anna, that's a wrap for today's episode on how to talk about stress in English. We covered so many expressions, from simple ones like I'm stressed to advanced phrases like I'm at my wit's end, and even ways to talk about coping strategies.
Yes, Adam. And remember, listeners, the key is to practice these phrases in your daily life, at work, at school, or with friends. The more you use them, the more confident and fluent you'll become.
Exactly, Anna. And don't forget to subscribe to Speak English Fluently if you haven't already, so you never miss our weekly episodes full of practical English tips.
Yes, and share this episode with your friends who might also want to improve their English and express their feelings naturally. Talking about stress is normal, and now you can do it clearly and confidently.
Thank you so much for listening, Anna. And to all our listeners, keep practicing, stay positive, and don't be afraid to express your feelings in English.
Absolutely, Adam. And we'll see you in the next episode with more tips, real life examples, and fun ways to improve your English. Stay confident and keep speaking.